Hey everyone. All right, so thank you so much for your patience, and thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm really excited to have everyone here to celebrate your students and give also a moment of gratitude for the support that everyone here has for one another, and the transition forward into young adults, high school life. I want to start by thanking some parent volunteers, Yashoda, for lending us this beautiful space to celebrate this evening in. I also want to thank Christina for organizing and helping with attendance and all these behind the scenes tasks that while we were on trip were just so helpful. And then I also want to thank John for helping coordinate food and drinks for after the ceremony for us to celebrate together. And then I also want to thank everyone who has come tonight, whether you're coming from just around the corner or from far away to be here tonight, to be here to celebrate with this class. I want to thank the students for a fantastic month that we are summarizing tonight, that we are wrapping up tonight, that we are celebrating tonight. And then I also want to thank them for a fantastic time with Chelsea, Luke, and I, and also a fantastic year at Watershed. Let me confer with my notes. Oh, and then I also want to thank Luke and Chelsea. Okay, I want to thank them for their partnership, their leadership, and their support throughout this month and throughout the school year. A little bit about this order that we are going to go through. The students are actually sitting in their order right now. So Eamon is going to start, and we're going to go down this line and then to the back and over this way. Now that's important because this is not just a ceremony where you are the audience. In our second round, folks that are sharing a toast with your student will actually come up and join your student on stage. And so we'll go through a first round. They're going to share reflections on their course, their takeaways, their experiences, and then we'll do a second round. And in that second round, you are welcome to come up and join. This area up here is not suited for everyone. If you have a larger collection of family here today, but those who are addressing the student can join up here and participate in the whole ceremony. That is the second half. Just a few notes about this space. If you need to use the restrooms at all, they are at the back of the hall that you took off your shoes in. At the end of the ceremony, we will have both drinks and food. There'll be food in this back room and drinks in this front room here. And we really encourage you to stay and have conversations about the trip, follow-up questions maybe, or just have a good time with this group that's here right now. But of course, if you need to take off on the early side, you're more than welcome to do that as well. All right. Without further ado. Oh, a note. Sorry, Eamon. On applause, let's save applause for the end of each round. So once we get through everyone and finish with I, we'll applaud after that for that first round, and then we can go through the second round just to help us with the transitions.
I'm in. I've been a Watershed since sixth grade, and you'll probably hear a lot about the trip, but sadly, right before the trip, I suffered an injury requiring me to stay home. So instead of frolicking in South Dakota, I was sitting at home on the couch doing virtually nothing. Like I said, that injury, it made me kind of reflect, and I realized how grateful I am to have a working body and whatnot. And instead of being on the trip, I had to complete a few school assignments, such as reading a book, Blackout Speaks, which I found extremely engaging. The story follows a young boy, Black Elk, as he tries to fulfill a vision and become holy. My second experience that I would like to reflect on was when we visited the Denver Art Museum. And this helped me learn how to sympathize and help Indigenous peoples. There were a multitude of pieces in the museum that I enjoyed, but the one that I enjoyed the most was a collage of tragedies that have happened all around the United States. And I think this one stuck with me because of how good the art piece was, but also because of how meaningful it is and how it does a great job of putting a bunch of things in one canvas. So some of the takeaways from this is after reading Blackout, I learned a lot about the culture of the Lakota people. After I read the book, I felt that I could easily sympathize with the Lakota people much better than I previously could. Second of my takeaways is how much suffering humans have and can cause. These takeaways matter going forward because next year I'm doing a lot of traveling throughout the world, and I think it'll be really useful to be able to talk and engage with people about their cultures, which is something I've learned a lot about so far.
Hello, my name is Arbor Gillespie, and this is my second year at Watershed. So recently, all of the 8th grade, we went on a trip to the Pine Ridge Reservation. We went camping and backpacking in the Black Hills as well. While backpacking, there was a thunderstorm above, and it was a very dreary, wet day, which I know many of us disliked. We did not end up making the planned backpacking trip, but despite the weather and the harsh conditions that we face, most of us were still showing a positive morale throughout the whole trip. I think this showed my perseverance through hardship, and as a group, it showed our teamwork. I also noticed that many people, including myself, were really looking forward to peaking the mountain and backpacking more. So when I got word that we were not going to be completing the whole planned trip, I personally was slightly disappointed, and so were some of my peers. But I think overall, we did well maintaining a positive attitude, and I took away knowledge on how flexible I can be and how flexible the group can be. Another experience that I had was early in the trip. During our stay at the Pine Ridge Reservation, we went to a foster home, and we were assigned to clean up a yard there, power wash the fence, and build a boardwalk and fix a broken gate. I chose to work on the gate, and while I was working on the gate, I realized that I really enjoyed working on it, and this told me that in the future, I might want to work more with my hands. I also thought it was very cool to see a broken gate turn into a working, functioning gate. Knowing this is very important so that I can pave a clear path so I can make possible choices which I would like to pursue when I get to an older age. Yes, thank you.
Hello, my name is Eli Goldstein, and this is my 3rd year at Watershed. First, I want to talk about the 3 days after we left Pine Ridge of almost everything going wrong. So during that time, everything was pretty stressful because a lot of things were going wrong. We ended up staying in a hotel. It was pretty chaotic. But we as a group were able to stay positive, which allowed that experience to be a lot less stressful and a lot more fun for us overall. For example, during the backpacking, as Arbor mentioned, it was raining really hard, and me and Stefan, who were in a tent, we were taking the tent down, and I accidentally spilled my water bottle in the tent, getting all the stuff in, well, not the stuff inside, but the inside of the tent soaking wet. And instead of Steph getting really mad at me, we were just able to laugh it off. And it like wasn't a big deal because at that point all of our stuff was wet anyway. So next I want to talk about after the 3 days of going wrong. So that we went to a place called Crazy Horse Memorial, and we, like Eamon mentioned, we read a book called Black Elk Speaks. And because we read that book, I actually knew who Crazy Horse was. And so I was able to have a much better understanding of the memorial than I would if I hadn't read that book. Also, in the memorial, they had a museum, and at the museum, there was a headdress, and I think it was Black Elk's son headdress, and I probably wouldn't have known what that was if I had, I wouldn't have known who that was if I hadn't read the book. So reading the book really allowed me to have a much better understanding of the whole place overall. In high school, back to what I was talking about earlier, in high school, the trips are probably going to be out of country. And so we might not have the opportunity to drive back like we had on this trip. And so it's a lot more important for us to be able to stay positive when things go wrong. And so that it's a lot less stressful and that we can actually figure things out a lot faster. So when we get into high school, we're going to have, these longer trips and these tougher times. And so it'll be a lot more positive. It's important to be positive. So basically what I'm saying is during tough times, it's important to keep positive. And when you're going into a place, it's important to, get more of a research that kind of place before, so you can have a much better understanding and get a lot more out of the experience.
Hello, my name is Amelia Grayson, and this is my first year at Watershed. As Nature approached, I felt a mixture of emotions, nervousness, and excitement. One of the things I was especially nervous about was backpacking. I'm not a big hiker. In my free time, it's not something I enjoy. So I was not super excited about this, but also very nervous. While backpacking, it was raining heavily, and I was having a difficult time enjoying myself. However, everyone else in the group was having a great time. Their spirits were high. I realized that focusing on the negatives, I was making it worse for myself. So I decided to embrace the positive mood of the group, and it helped me have a better time. My backpacking experience improved once I changed my mindset. It was so much more fun, and it made me excited for next year's orientation backpacking. I also was nervous before my solo, as I would be alone for 5 to 7 hours. I had spent the previous week with people, and I hadn't had any alone time, so making this sudden change was even more daunting. However, my nerves settled as I arrived to my spot, on the lake next to a cliff. I spent my time climbing the cliff, observing the water and the fish. But when lunch arrived, I began to worry about how I would occupy myself for the next 5 hours. I had already explored everything around me and was left with my thoughts. Thankfully, the journal prompts, like, what have you learned about yourself and others this week? As you leave middle school, what do you want to keep and leave behind? And what are some of the privileges that you recognize in your own life? Helped me reflect on not only the trip, but the past, present, and future as well. The extended period of solitude allowed me to converse with myself and ponder the past and the future, and reflect on the past week because so much had come so fast. Reflecting on the past week, there were so many events that occurred so rapidly. My takeaways from this trip were numerous, but the most substantial ones were the people around you can make or break your experience, like on the backpacker trip. And also that sitting with yourself is one of the most important things you need to learn how to do, because you are the only person who's always there for you.
Hello, my name is Ada Kyoto, and I have been at Watershed since 6th grade. And I will be sharing some of the most memorable experiences that I've had from our trip to South Dakota. Some of these are the most memorable things from all of middle school, and these memories will last me a lifetime. My first key takeaway / central experience is solos and staying in a hotel. The reason I'm combining these two is that they both taught me a very valuable lesson that was similar to each other: rest, whether it be with people or solitary. So right before I did my solo on the bus ride to Sylvan Lake, which is where we did our solos, I was feeling very tired, and it was the last day of the trip, so I'd been socializing for 9 days at that point, and I was honestly feeling kind of done. I was ready to go home, and I missed my family quite a bit. So anyway, when we got to our solo spot, I thought that I would be tired and out of it. But when we got there and sat down, and I sat down on my rock and looked out at the lake, I was confused. I was wondering why I was so awake and attentive. Time felt like it was going kind of fast. I wasn't bored at all when I suddenly realized that I was feeling awake and attentive because I was alone. I'm a very social person, and normally when I'm alone, I feel less energetic and get tired. But this time, I was suddenly wide awake. And I realized that it is a necessity for everyone to be able to take a break and just be alone. And when I stayed in a hotel, I was with 4 other people, but I was still able to relax and lay in bed. I was already feeling kind of tired at that point, and we still had 5 more days. Without that bit of rest, I think that I would have felt a lot less energized for the rest of the trip. And this overall gave me quite a bit more energy for the upcoming backpacking, which I definitely needed. My second central experience is backpacking in the rain. I will most likely remember this for the rest of my life. Probably a lot of people chose this as one of their central experiences because it was so miserable while also being so fun. During this experience, I learned that I definitely need a rain cover for my backpack because a lot of my stuff got soaked. And I definitely learned that it is better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. The area that we were was also so beautiful. I love Lord of the Rings, and the landscape with a thick layer of fog covering everything definitely reminded me of the scenery in it. This was one of the prettiest areas I've been to, with barely being able to see the tree-covered mountains and the stone pillars that looked like needles poking through felt in the fog. On this trip, I learned a lot, like needing to expect the unexpected and that there's beauty in misery. But my biggest takeaway was needing to take time for myself. I've always considered myself as a big extrovert, and I will always love to be around people. Whenever someone asks me if I want to hang out, I will always say yes. I will want to talk and ask questions and answer them when someone asks one to me. But this trip taught me that I'm not just an extrovert. I also need to take time for myself. I need time to be able to rest and be alone. I can't always be around people. And before this, I thought that I could. And again, this whole trip gave me an experience that I'll remember for the rest of my life. The hard times, the beautiful times, the fun times, the miserable ones, and everything in between. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sasha Hausfeld. It's my first year at Watershed, and it's a pleasure to be here in front of all of you. This course has held a plethora of meaningful and beautiful experiences, and it would be impossible to name all of them today. So I've narrowed it down to 2 things. We started with work at a foster care center at Pine Ridge Reservation. I came into this experience with a sense of naivete by thinking that my being there could maybe change a little bit of the immensely deep-rooted systemic oppression and hurt. Yeah, that worked out really well. After a grim realization that I wouldn't be able to change the world in 3 days, I focused my energy on maybe, just maybe, making a slight difference in a few people's lives by building a simple boardwalk, fixing a door to a fence, and making the place look a little nicer with my equally passionate peers. I started by removing dirty planks and making blockades for snakes, getting the hang of hammers, screwdrivers, and different nails. There was an immense feeling of satisfaction when we moved a stubborn nail or watched a door open smoothly. I hope to be a person in the future who can find ways to make little things better and to not only save myself some grief, but those around me. Hopefully this course will serve as a reminder that I can't save the world, but I can make a few aspects of some lives a little better. Pine Ridge started our camping journey. And as Plan A turned into Plan B and C and D and so on, I think I and everyone else was beginning to suffer a bit. It was cold and wet. We were all tired and hurting a little. And I mentioned it was wet. But somehow I found small moments of hilarity and euphoria in the incredible views and my killer mohawk I got from some very passionate peers. I set my backpack down, taking a breath of relief, ogling at the green pines and the fog-adorned mountains. My cheeks were sore from smiling. So, despite the arguably terrible conditions, we could look at this incredible place with these incredible people and smile. I remember vividly when we approached a massive gray cliff looking at the face of the highest mountain in South Dakota. was overwhelmed with pure joy and appreciation for everything around me. And this is going to sound sappy, but I was filled with appreciation not only for the experience being in these gorgeous mountains, but also for the opportunity to be at a school where I have the turn to reflect and to think. After the trip, we shared our highlights and lowlights. One of everyone's highlights was the backpacking trip. I know many folks speechless will have a similar structure to mine, which I think says a lot about how meaningful it was as a whole. It was an eventful 10 days, and days I hope to never forget. I learned more than I can ever describe, not only about Native culture, but about myself. The journal prompts, specifically one of the first prompts, which was reflecting on truths about ourselves. My definite truth is that I am strong. And a truth I'm working on is being able to take care of others and to take care of myself. I also learned a few small realities of living on the reservation, the poverty, and also the extremely sacred community. It was an experience, a beautiful, messy, challenging, and wonderful experience. It was time for rumination, for learning, and time for appreciation. Thank you.
My name is Lily Lisbon, and this is my third year at Watershed. And I'm going to share my two big experiences and takeaways from me. So my most memorable experience was backpacking. Before we started backpacking, we stayed the night in a motel in Waldrug. This felt like a perfect rest before we started backpacking, and I reset myself before. Previously, the day before the hotel was chaotic. We were on the bus, and the teachers were in a van, and we got split up. Well, they got stuck, and we had to retrace our steps back to them. Once we got back to them, they managed to get the van unstuck. So then we had to drive back to where we originally were. Then we finally got to the Badlands where we set up our tent in the wind, and then Teddy said that it was too windy to stay, so then we had to pack up our tents again, and then we left for Waldrug and the motel. So in the morning, we left to go backpacking. While we were backpacking, it was pouring rain, and it was really, really cold and pretty miserable. We finished hiking, and we finally set up camp, and we filtered water, so we had water to drink and cook with. So once we had our tents up and everything, I remember I was finally laying down, and I was thinking about how much I missed home, and eventually I began thinking about how grateful I was for everything I had at home. Moving forward, I want to remember things I appreciate and learn to appreciate more on the trip, like being able to shower after working, being warm after backpacking. My other takeaway would be when we were camping, and it was the last night of the trip. I was super tired, and I just wanted to go to sleep and go home. But when we were sitting by the fire, sharing our solo experiences, appreciation to our peers, and we were just about to explore. But while we were doing that, I felt that I appreciated everything a little bit more. I had deeper emotions and just felt better. I stopped thinking about the future and started focusing on the present. That was my biggest takeaway.
My name is Shadow, and I've been at Watershed for 2 years. Throughout this incredible journey, we encountered numerous challenges that would have overwhelmed an ordinary group. However, what sets us apart is the sense of community that unites us. Together, we remained positive with what we had, refusing to desire an unattainable reality. While we may have occasionally thought, I was home right now, we possessed the strength to internalize those thoughts and persevere. I commend the entire 8th grade and our dedicated educators for embodying this skill throughout our trip. The solo initially seemed mundane, but its course soon took an unexpected turn when a chipmunk snuck its way into my snacks. Surprisingly, a peculiar friendship blossomed between us. After bidding farewell to my newfound companion, I started a creative endeavor, creating arrowheads from rocks and writing answers to my journal prompts. Set against the backdrop of Sylvan Lake, the solo day began with a nice radiant sunshine gradually succumbing to a blanket of clouds as time went on. The significance of the solo is a rare opportunity that it afforded us to reflect and enjoy this time in solitude. Whether the experience yielded profound personal insights or provided respite from the rest of the world, it proved beneficial to all who partook in it. During my solo, I made a surprising discovery. It's remarkably easy to entertain oneself when alone. Unlike my usual reliance on music, videos, or podcasts, I found solace in solitude, experiencing a newfound sense of contentment and silence. It was refreshing. It was a refreshing departure from my usual distractions and offering a new sense of liberation. Day 5 unraveled as a whirlwind of chaos, where Murphy's Law, which is everything that can go wrong will go wrong, seemed to govern our entire day. As we departed Pine Ridge to go to the Badlands, misfortune struck Teddy and Chelsea, leaving them stranded on the roadside. We decided that it was a good idea to stay together, so we retraced our steps, only for them to miraculously free themselves as we approached. Thus, we redirected our course to the Badlands, only to encounter insane winds upon arrival. And amidst the tempest, we hastily pitched our tents up, only to dismantle them shortly after. Thankfully, I, however, remained exempt from this ordeal because a tick had found its way onto my neck and started to embed itself. Shortly after we found the tick, Chelsea removed it. Leaving the Badlands behind, we journeyed towards the town of Wall, eagerly anticipating our encounter with the store of Wall Jug. En route, we were bombarded by numerous signs proclaiming the wonders of the establishment. Declarations such as "Kids love Wall Jug" and "As seen on National Geographic" heightened our anticipation, and we had even encountered a sign saying that Wall Jug had a gas station. In need of gas, we decided to drive to Wall Jug. Alas, when we finally arrived seeking fuel for our vehicles, we discovered that Wall Jug, in fact, did not have a gas station. While in Wall, we sought refuge at a Best Western motel, where an amusing irony presented itself when their thank you card proudly proclaimed it to be near the world-famous Wall Jug. During one of our, I skipped a bit. No, I didn't. During one of our journal prompts, we were asked the question, what do you want to leave behind in middle school, and what do you want to bring with you to high school? I had a somewhat unique perspective on this matter. On the last night, we gathered in a circle and shared our answers. Most people expressed their desire to want to leave behind the bad memories and mistakes. In contrast, I found myself wanting to hold on to these bad memories and embrace my mistakes. Why, you may wonder? It's because those challenging moments are the ones that have shaped me the most, and they've taught me invaluable lessons that have molded my character. While it's natural to strive for perfection and pursue only the good, it is the trials and tribulations that truly define us. They are the catalyst for personal growth and transformation. So I choose to carry the weight of my mistakes and cherish the memories, both bad and good, as I step into the next chapter of my life. My dad's proposal for the answer to the prompt, "What privileges do you have?" was a thought-provoking one that resonated with me deeply. He proposed that privilege doesn't necessarily have to be material, but it can be cultural or emotional. This notion stayed with me long after the solo, sparking reflection and contemplation. Similarly, my mom had a similar proposal, suggesting that resources, culture, intelligence, and more can be forms of privilege. As we stand here ready to embark on the adventure of high school, let us embrace the strength of our community, the power of our shared experiences, and the wisdom gained from our past. Let us approach the future with open minds and open hearts, knowing that our journey has prepared us for whatever lies ahead.
I'm Lara, and I've been here since 6th grade. Well, this trip has had some interesting parts to it. One of the most central experiences for me, at least, was my solo. What I think that stuck with me in my mind long after was, in my mind, I'm a pretty visual person. And for a lot of this trip, we were obviously moving pretty fast to get through a lot of things in 10 minutes. But here I was able to sit for about 6 hours, and I was able to really capture the moment for me and to have it be more memorable than the first days we've gone through before. Another part that stuck out to me would be the last 2 days. The other days, we always had a goal, building something in foster care, cleaning up a place here, doing something, moving around. But on these days, they were much more lax. We drove to a park to see animals, went to Crazy Horse Memorial, Mount Rushmore, got ice cream, then went back and played backgammon. This gave me a lot more time to rest compared to other days. And it showed how being able to slow down and be alone is actually a good thing, and not having that for 10 days can really wear on someone. So that was good to have that opportunity. Well, these are my more memorable experiences. I also had some takeaways from them, even though they were just fun. A takeaway from my last 2 days was, compared to the backpacking, this was, in my mind, a lot harder. Though not physically. This one was a lot more mentally challenging because it was you were more with people than when you went in the backpacking, and it was hard to distract yourself with something else. And being mentally tired really weighs on someone. I feel it's more than physically, which you have the ability to ignore easier. But this also just showed that being mentally okay when you're trying to do something can really impact how well you do it and how much you enjoy it with the people you're around. My takeaway from my solo was I usually always have something playing in my ears or something influencing me from the outside world, such as videos and music. But sitting for about 7 hours without that really left me to my own thoughts. And I think it was very beneficial to just be able to listen to my own self and not be influenced by someone from the outside world for my own thoughts. Well, these overall mattered. I think they will stay the longest because of that. Whether the story, this trip will also be retold in my mind, and hopefully, consistently, we've always retold stories from our last couple of trips and names of people who've been here. And I think this one will be no different. I think the whole trip has been memorable for all of us, and it will be retold and bring people from this trip back together. Overall, this is a very interesting trip and one that will hopefully be retold.
My name is Seth. This is my first year at Watershed. We recently went on a trip where we visited Pine Ridge Reservation for a couple of days, and then camped in the woods and then on a campsite. I'll be offering some reflections on that trip and some takeaways from said reflections. The first experience I'll be talking about is when we were backpacking in the rain. We were trying to get everybody up in the morning after backpacking, after a night of rainy backpacking, to get back to the bus so we could drive and go to our next destination. The campground we chose was right off the trail. It had been raining for the whole day, and we chose this area because it was flat, sheltered, and there was an area nearby where we could set a kitchen. Waking up in the morning when everybody else did was horrible. My whole sleeping bag and bed were soaked from the intense rain through the tent, and my feet were so wrinkled they hurt. My whole body was cold, but I at least slept through the whole day. I was in also a worse situation because nobody else was around to share my coldness because I was the only one that wasn't cold or warm and dry. Because everything I owned was wet, that included my gloves. If you have wet gloves, they freeze, and hands also freeze if you wear them. So I had to not wear them. This resulted in them being slightly warmer, but still super cold. The tents were being taken down, and I tried to help as much as I could, which was not that much. The hike back was super fast and easy. I felt I did not feel good about myself because I didn't help basically at all when we were setting down the tents. I learned that however much you're suffering, it's important to keep trying to succeed. I could have helped a lot more than I did. Other people were trying to help a lot more. I also learned that you have to make the best out of every situation, which I didn't really do well that morning. This is very important for the process of succeeding and the group's well-being. For example, if a whole group of people don't put that much effort into something, that's not the easiest to do, nothing much gets done. But if everyone works hard, it all speeds up everything, and lots of things are accomplished. The second experience I'll be talking about is when we went to the Badlands and tried to set up our tents. After a lengthy bus ride to the Badlands, we arrived at the campsite and stepped outside when we were suddenly hit by a strong gust of wind. Determined to get everything set up, even though the winds were incredibly strong, we tried to set up our tents. Like other groups, we got ours, Eli's and mine, set up. However, the wind ripped all of our stakes out of the ground, and the tent almost flew away.
We ultimately decided to pack up all of our tents, leave the campsite, and stay at a motel for the night. I did not mind the sudden plan changing because the motel was comfortable and I enjoyed it. In the Badlands with the super strong wind, I learned something significant. I knew that even if you work hard, sometimes you just got to stop what you're doing and do something else, essentially give up. However, completely stopping what you're doing and giving up is not something you want to do. Most times, you only do it if there's a bad outcome. It's best to simply stop what you're doing and adapt. When the stage ripped out of the ground for our tent, it was a good indicator that we had to stop or we'd have a lousy tent camp. By stopping, simply stop being so narrow-minded about trying to finish something and simply just adapt to make it not that tough. We were to insist on everybody's tent staying up. It'd be a safety hazard, so we gave up setting the tents and simply spent the night in the motel. Giving up occasionally can help with the success of group shows. This can help you do something that has no good outcome without trying to give up. Sometimes perseverance is good to practice, but not always. In conclusion, from all the experiences I had, good and bad, during the major trip, I learned a lot from all of them. I learned that perseverance is very important whenever you're doing something important, but it is also good to just stop what you're doing sometimes. Stopping what you're doing is not always the best course of action, though, and should only be done in dire situations that could affect your health or the group's well-being.
Hi, my name's Colin, and so far I've attended Watershed throughout my entire middle school experience. And right now I'm going to talk about 2 experiences I had on the trip. And I think that day 5 was like a really important central experience for me. So that's why we were trying to set up camp in the Badlands. We ran into quite a few issues, starting at the very beginning of the day, when our campsite was in kind of danger of flooding and it prevented us from leaving earlier to go to the Badlands. So we ended up leaving a lot later. And while we were on our way there, the cargo van ended up getting stuck. And while we were driving back to go get them, they got out before we got there, and it ended up basically just making the drive a little longer. And once we got there and started to set up the tents, we realized that it was way too windy for the tents. The highest tent ended up getting cooled basically inside out, and we had to leave the campsite and go to a motel for the night because we really didn't have many other options. I think that this was a really important experience for me because while it was something of a struggle, I kind of had a lot of fun along the way when we were trying to set up tents and all running and yelling, just trying to figure this stuff out. But amidst the chaos, it was all still like a pretty fun and exciting experience for me. I think that the backpacking trip with all its terrible rain was still another really great experience for me, as while it did make everything kind of wet and uncomfortable at times, it also made it so that everything was absolutely beautiful, things just being like lush and green. And I think this really showed how it can kind of, like, while this can be a bad thing, it can also be a really nice thing. So we did have to do a lot of things, such as setting up and breaking our tents down in the rain and not being able to dry things like our rain jackets off in the tent, because otherwise we'd end up soaking our sleeping bags. But I still think that with that, it was a really good experience on the backpacking trip, and I'm glad it ended up raining because I kind of took a lot from it, and it was a really cool, beautiful experience. The main takeaway that I got from these 2 experiences is that even when things are really going wrong, we can still end up making the best of it. So there's really kind of a silver lining. And things seemed like they were going down for like 3 days on the trip, but I think those 3 days were the days where I kind of took the most away from it, and I really had a kind of a good time. And I'm somewhat glad for those issues because they ended up shaping the trip in a really cool, different way. And I don't think it would have ended up being like that without those kind of issues. The other major takeaway that I had was that doing work can be really satisfying. And when we were working at the foster care center, it was really cool and rewarding to see our work get completed. I think that it's cool that I could see this really nice boardwalk, in my opinion, that I played a part in making. And I think that for that reason, I want to do more of that type of work, just trying to make something nicer. I think there were a couple examples of this on the trip. And another one was when we were picking up the trash by the makerspace. Just seeing that end result of like a nice, much cleaner area made everything seem kind of just a lot nicer. I think I've gotten really a lot of takeaways from this trip, those being the main ones. And for me, I'm really glad that I was able to have these takeaways on this trip, and I'm glad it ended up the way it was. And I think these are some things that I could definitely take with me in the future.
Hey, how y'all doing? My name is William Schnitzer, and I've been at Watershed for 2 years. During the passage trip, we went to Pine Ridge Reservation, and we went back. And then after that, we went to see some more touristy places. My favorite part was backpacking and the Pine Ridge Reservation. My first central experience was backpacking in the mountains, surrounded by trees and boulders towering over the ground like skyscrapers. Cool mist that felt made look something straight out of Lord of the Rings. Backpacking itself was really fun too. Most of the time, I just was talking to my friends, and when we got there, we had a ton of time afterwards, so we got to explore a little bit as long as we could see the path. So me and my friends did that for the majority of the time. We found caves, cool views, and other wacky, tacky things. However, I'm sad because we couldn't get to finish the hike. We were actually planning on going the next day. The day we went down, we were planning on going to Black Elk's Peak, which is the tallest peak in South Dakota. But it's ranked. My takeaway from this is I have a ton of fun still in really challenging scenarios, and I learned this from the fact that my excitement never wavered, even when I was soaking wet and cold. I could use this in my life because if I'm in a less than ideal situation, I would still be positive. My second experience was doing my solo next to Sullivan Lake in South Dakota still, which was smooth as glass, really beautiful. The section I was given on the solo had trees on one side and some rocky area on the other. I was some great varying terrain, so whenever I got bored, I could go from one section to the other. And however, I spent most of my time on the rocky section exploring, journaling, and practicing in some R and R. My takeaway from this solo is that I really enjoy time alone, and I learned this with the fact that I never really got bored, and I always had something to do, something to think about. If I were in a situation where I was alone, I could still entertain myself.
Hi, I'm Kai, and this is my third year of Watershed. So in the course, we focused on Pine Reservation and the history of it, as well as going into high school, and we also went on the trip. So throughout the trip, we went to foster care and the makerspace. Some things did not go as planned, wanted to, and I came away with a few major takeaways from the trip. So during a solo, I had time to reflect on myself. There's not much to do in my class, so I felt like confined in a little blocky area. And the takeaway I came away with is a comfortable or familiar community, familiar figures, and familiar surroundings are super important. I can relate this to past experiences. When I am in an unfamiliar place, I can feel really restricted, things are uncomfortable, awkward, and the context to be limited. So it's not this fun. So going to high school and teacher endeavors, I think that I'm to try to just make a community for myself, bring everyone together, make friends, get to know people, and develop my best. So On the backpacking, as you know, it was really wet and rainy, and I hate being wet. It is my least favorite thing, and this made it really uncomfortable. But after reflecting on it, I came with the takeaway that even though something is uncomfortable, that does not mean you can enjoy it. And this also relates to a personal hobby I have, which is PeakSense. And on PeakSense, like up high in Colorado, the air quality is way thinner and there's a lot of wind. It's not the most comfortable, but I still enjoy it and I still have fun. Another thing I learned is that a positive attitude and perseverance is key, and you'll mostly get the best outcome from it depending on the experience. Throughout the entire backpacking experience and mostly the trip, everyone had really positive attitude and persevered. And everyone's like really happy, and when they were down, they didn't really show up for everyone. Just grateful down, and it just made the entire trip better overall. So moving forward for that, in the future, I know that challenging situations might not always be like boring or not fun. It could be fun or enjoyable and kind of challenging. I also am able to like step up my comfort zone because I'm just like able to identify that it's fun and not the worst experience. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our first round through. Now we will be moving to our second round where families are welcome to join your students as they arrive up here. This is a great transition time right now. If you are desperate for a sip of water or desperate to go to the bathroom, it's a great time.
Variables.
So I believe that gratitude is one of the most important and yet difficult things to express. That is why I'd like to say that I'm incredibly grateful for you and all. Whether it's the amazing opportunities and experiences you provide, like all the travel we've done, or people you've introduced me to, I'm very grateful for everything. I'm also grateful for you putting up with my music every time we travel. Thank you for dancing, roller skating, and supporting all my various ventures throughout my life. Thank you very much. And for John, there are so many things I'm grateful for. Things like the amazing breakfast you always make, driving me to a wide array of places such as classes and basketball games. I'm grateful most of all for the things you've taught me and the love that you provide. Thank
You're going to say something wonderful?
I don't know.
John?
So that's the bowl you would have taken on the trip.
Yeah.
And notice that it's nice and dry.
And then this is a piece of selenite bowl. And selenite has you always have your connection to Egypt. So there's a connection to Egypt with it. But also it represents the moon goddess named after the moon goddess Selena. So here's a bowl of selenite. May you fill it with all of your dreams. Always be you.
All right. Being without my parents on the trip gave me a lot of time to think about what I'm grateful for them. I'm very grateful for all of my opportunities that you provide me, whether it is with school, sporting activities, or trips and vacations. It is all thanks to you that all these opportunities play a large role. It's all thanks to you for all these opportunities And all these opportunities play a very large role in my life and in my future life. I'm also very grateful for you for taking care of my sister and me, and how you make sure you're taken care of. It is very kind how you will prioritize us over yourself, and I'm very appreciative of it. Dad, thank you, Dad, for taking me to my various sporting events, especially since snowboarding is a very big hassle and it requires long drives and housing in the mountains for multiple days. This is important to me because without somebody to drive me there, it would be extremely difficult to get there. I also think these excursions are a great way for me to progress, and I enjoy them a lot. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the bowl. Now, I did this for your sister a few years ago, and it was interesting to me to think of what I would want for you as compared to what I would want for her. And they're nothing alike. I don't even know if you know which one's first. I don't remember. But in any event, I picked this one because number one, it's made of wood. And your name is Arbor. And your name is Arbor because when your sister was like a newborn, I had a dream vision something that I had another child named Arbor, and I was like, absolutely not. Never doing this again. But I should let that so that was one of the reasons, the most obvious reason. This is made of maple. The other thing that I thought that it reminded me of you is because it has this smoothness and then this. And I've always admired how you are so calm and collected throughout your life. Like you encounter things that I think are big deals or are challenging and, get me all riled up, but they do not get you riled up. I think that is such a fantastic characteristic that you just sort of kind of flow through your life with this ease. So that is why I select this one. I think you should go into your future, which come to find out is a bigger transition than I thought it was going to be as far as high school goes. I think that same characteristic, that adventurous spirit that you have, but the ease in which you encounter obstacles in life in general will definitely carry you through and make those challenges and excitement something that you can really appreciate and not struggle against, but just take in and learn from and grow with. And I believe that's what's going to happen. That's the fun.
All right, thank you.
Well, just to add a little bit to that, sure. Looking at this bowl, you can see, like your mom said, the smooth part of it. But then if you look, it's a little rough around the edges. So I think that's a lot like you. There's a smooth part of you, and there's a rough part of you. And since this bowl came from a living, growing organism, you should take that into consideration, how you can grow and change, and some of your layers can grow and change too, right? And also when looking at a bowl like this, I know some things that you like to do are modifications. So you could make a bowl, a makeshift musical instrument, or maybe even a hat if you run into a rainstorm in the Badlands.
Yeah. So,
thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Firstly, I'd like to thank my grandma, Babasis. You came all the way here from Florida to come see me do this presentation, and I'm very grateful for that. You also always take us on these amazing trips to Hawaii and the Caribbean, and they're always really fun. And honestly, it's the best Christmas present I could ask for. I'd also like to thank my Uncle Adam. You're probably one of the nicest uncles ever, and you live really close, so you're always there if we need you. Also, almost every time I see you, give me some sort of chocolate or candy or something like that. Finally, I'd like to thank you guys, Mom and Dad, for taking care of me for almost 15 years and making me dinner almost every single night. You guys do a really good job of trying to support my passions, but also telling me when they're unrealistic. Well, also, you're okay if I don't want to follow those passions. Specifically, Mom, I would like to thank you for pushing me to do breakdancing. You also are always fun and willing to have a dance party. You also push me to try and do creative things instead of just playing video games all day. Dad, I'd like to thank you for giving me your sense of humor. We can make dumb jokes that we can laugh about all day. Also, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to Sunday soccer and taking me on driver's lessons because I love to do both of those things. I'd lastly like to thank my family, including the ones that aren't here, for allowing me to go to this school and taking me trips on all over the world that I might not be able to go on otherwise.
Here's a ball for you. And if it looks like somebody dropped it and put it back together again, that's because they did. So the kintsugi is a Japanese art where you mend things with gold. And so that's what this is here. And it symbolizes how the repair is really what's important. How our lives can be made better, more beautiful, and stronger through careful repair. Things get broken. That's life, especially when lived with the adventurous spirit that you always possess. But chips, cracks, and stumbles are not the end. They're just steps along the way toward a fuller, richer outcome. It's like the quote from the poet Rainer Maria Rilke that appears at the end of Jojo Rabbit. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is fine.
So, Eli, there have been countless times that you have mended us, and we have mended you. And we will always be there to pick up the pieces when you fall. I can remember very well when you experimented with a spinning bike wheel and almost cut off your finger. And somehow, luckily, you kids are like amphibians, and so your finger grew back. And like the bowl, we will continue to repair and be there for you when you fall. We love you and are so excited for you to go on this next adventure of high school and fall down and get back up many